Hello and welcome back to Popcorn Chat. I hope you guys are doing well. This is my first video of 2023. I know it's a little bit late as we are midway through January now. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about the film Enys Men. Now this is a little indie film about a Cornish folk horror. So I was curious to check this one out. It seemed like my cup of tea. So let's get into the video. So Enys Men was written and directed by Mark Jenkin. Now I've not seen his previous film Bait, which I know is a bit of a cult classic. A lot of people seem to be loving that film, that sort of Cornish folk horror he seems to be loving. But this one had a lot of talk sort of coming out even at the end of last year. So I was excited to check this one out and see what everyone was sort of so hyped about and sort of see what this director had to offer. So in this film, we follow a woman who lives on an island on the Cornish coast, and she's a volunteer who is observing these rare flowers. And in her stay on this island, she begins to witness strange goings-on, which forces her to question a lot of what's reality and what's a nightmare. So this film was categorised as a folk horror. Now, I wanted to see a lot of bizarre sort of going on, maybe some other sort of people getting involved in this and some more sort of pagan kind of rituals. But to be honest, a lot of that didn't sort of come into the last sort of 20 minutes of the film. The first hour is quite slow and it's very much lingering on the sort of unsettling nature through its longing camera shots, the Foley sound, and as well as the soundtrack that's constantly sort of luring and sort of building in the background. In that first hour, we get to see the volunteers' daily routine, and that in itself becomes quite repetitive. You know, after you've seen it twice, you expect things to start changing, but it takes a few goes and a few tries to sort of have these sort of supernatural and kind of creepy things begin to happen. So it took a long time for me to get going. So it was a little bit frustrating. I knew something was going to happen, knew something was going to change in that daily routine that Mark Jenkin sets up so beautifully. You know as an audience member what's going to happen next and what should happen. And then when those things start to go wrong, that's when I was really interested. So this film was shot on 16mm film, and that made it absolutely beautiful. That sort of grain and those colours really, really popped that you don't really get in digital cinema nowadays. And I know he's done this with his previous film, Bait. He loves to sort of get really hands-on with working with 16mm and developing it himself. And that was the same here. And it's interesting because it really sort of felt like you were watching a film from the 70s. It felt like it had been just lifted from that decade. It didn't feel like it was filmed in the 21st century at all. I do think the film's real sort of triumph is its last 20 minutes when the sort of the horror elements that this has been categorised as really sort of come into play. There's some visual imagery, there's some really sort of creative editing and sort of costumes and colours. There's a lot that the film plays with within that last sort of 20 minutes, and I just wish we saw that a little bit earlier on, and that would have kept me a little bit more sort of, you know, engaged. I mean, saying that, someone literally fell asleep 2 seats down from me and they sort of woke themselves up with a big snore. So this film wasn't for everyone in the screening that I was in, but yeah, I stuck with it, and I think those last sort of 20 minutes gives you that sort of payoff for the genre that it's been categorised in. The film itself explores a lot of time elements within this sort of island and, you know, the volunteers' sort of significance to the past, the present, you know, maybe the future. Overall, I thought that Enys Men was an okay film. It was maybe a little overhyped for me. I think there were some really interesting elements. Obviously, it's shot on 16mm, which makes it stand apart from a lot of horrors that we see nowadays. And you can see the effort and the time that has been put into this film, and that is obviously excellent. But I just think the film is too long. I think it could be concise and just cut out a lot of that beginning. You know, we can get the routine in quite quickly and then get into that sort of more horror element that I know a lot of people are wanting to see from this film. Though it has a great final act and some really interesting filmmaking elements, it just didn't fully work for me. So for that reason, I'm going to give this film 2.5 out of 5. Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen Enys Men, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I would love to check those out. And if you're new here, make sure you hit subscribe and like the video, as it means a lot when you guys do that. Don't forget, I also have a Patreon, so if you'd like to support the channel and myself, feel free to do that, but obviously there's no obligation there. But doing that gets you access to early videos before they come live on the channel and a schedule of what I'm going to be posting next. So if that sounds like your thing, then check out the Patreon link down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you very soon for another popcorn chat.